particularly late. The clock in Rebecca's den said 10 after 7. I started thinking about how to draw my mother's profile for the police if she'd gone missing. "Mom, I'm hungry," yelled Danny, Rebecca's big brother. He was 3 years older than us and never came out of his room during the daytime except when he wanted to tackle Rebecca or fart at us. "When are we gonna eat?" I heard Mrs. Mills answer him in a half-whisper, something about waiting for Mrs. Sher and maybe traffic, but that's not the point. Why did adults have to whisper so much, especially when it wasn't about something magical or fantastic, like hidden candy or a water slide? It made my mother's absence even more embarrassing. By the time Mom did tap on the Mills' screen door, it was pitch black out, or as close as it got to pitch black in the summer, more like an inky purple. It was still too sweltering to feel like the sun had completely vanished. Mom and Mrs. Mills whispered some more while I packed up my knapsack, and Rebecca told me I wish she didn't have to go home. "Me too," I said, even though it wasn't true. I was starving and annoyed at my mother for forgetting about me and not even apologizing. On the drive home, Mom and I didn't say much, but there was no space to hear anyway because the cicadas were clinging to the trees, screaming in waves. My older brother John had read all of our World Book encyclopedias, and he said that only male cicadas could make noise, and they did it with a special membrane near their stomach. They were supposed to visit our part of the country once every 13 or 17 years, but they must have loved my town because they seemed to descend upon us every summer. They nested in clumps, crouched under beach chairs, and scuttled beneath ice cream trucks. At night, they were so close I could feel them pulse in my skin. When we got to our house, the lights were on, and I could hear the voices and punches of laugh track from my older sister Betsy watching TV. Mom said it was too late to start cooking, so we'd be having leftover spaghetti and whatever was in the vegetable drawer. Dad came downstairs and poured himself and Mom a scotch and soda, kissed me on the head, and disappeared in his chair behind the newspaper. By the time we all sat down to eat, the noodles were hard on the ends like dried rubber cement, and the salad was more brown than green, sloshing in a small pond of Italian dressing. I tried to cover my whole plate with a flurry of Parmesan cheese and not say anything. Nobody said anything, which made the whole night seem even heavier and sweatier, and I wanted to tell those cicadas to shut up so I could figure out what was going on. Finally, Betsy started talking. She'd been reading this totally amazing book about Jim Morrison, who was much more than just like a songwriter, you know? He was a poet and he fought like a ton of demons, and she had learned so much about life and art, and it would really help if she could get her allowance raised so she could buy more art supplies and experience life more. Seriously. Betsy was only 4 years older than me, but those 4 years had given her boobs, her own blow-dryer, and a fearlessness that made me squirm in my seat. She wasn't afraid to let anyone know what she was thinking. "We'll see," Mom said slowly. "What does that even mean, we'll see?" "We'll see." So stupid. Betsy put down her fork and crossed her arms. John would typically jump in at this point. He didn't talk much, but when he did, he liked to point out the facts we were overlooking, like what percentage of the Earth's population had never heard of an allowance. But John had left for college 3 weeks earlier. We drove him down to Virginia, stopping at Dad's best friend Marty's house and playing with their dog Penny and eating Chinese food on a giant Lazy Susan. It was a spectacular trip until we came home and the dinner table seemed too long and too quiet, like it did this late and airless night, when only Betsy seemed unaware. "I just have to say, it's really unfair because if you're gonna say no, then just say no now," she sighed indignantly. "I didn't say no. I said we'll see," Mom responded, her voice low